The Tolkien Road, Episode 129, The Lord of the Rings, The Land of Shadow. All right, go ahead.
The Tolkien Road, 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 the Road of Tolkien, 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 the Road of Tolkien The Tolkien Road.
The Tolkien Road.
The Tolkien Road.
Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, a long walk through Middle-earth. On this episode, we continue our journey through The Lord of the Rings with Book 6, Chapter 2, The Land of Shadow. Before we get started, please head on over to iTunes and leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback. It's a great way to show your support for the show and takes less than a minute. You can also stop by TolkienRoad.com, learn about previous episodes, and say hey. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TolkienRoad and on Twitter via @TolkienRoad. Thanks for listening and enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome to the Tolkien Road, episode 129, Lord of the Rings, Book 6, Chapter 2, The Land of Shadow. Special thanks to our executive producers, Dr. William Hutton and Justine Lloyd, as well as our other generous patrons. Greta,
Hey,
how are you?
good. How are
Doing
you?
well? I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
Well, what a week it's been, huh? Man,
Crazy.
crazy. Went from, literally when we recorded the last episode, we were like, yeah, Amazon said they, the rumor is that Amazon wants to do a Lord of the Rings TV show, something like that. And, everybody's like, what's that all about? And literally, after we were done recording, the news hits that it's official. The deal has been signed. The Tolkien estate is involved. And we still don't know much about what the show will actually be, but we know we did a special episode shortly thereafter that you can go back and listen to if you haven't already. It should be the previous one in your feed as you're listening to this. And, it basically just deals with what do we know from the Amazon announcement, right? And, and we do a little speculating on it as well. You can also go over and watch it on YouTube if you want to, see us live in person talking about it. But it's exciting times.
It's super exciting.
We're TV. We like TV shows. We like long form, well produced TV shows.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. We watch those far more actually than we watch movies because it's just easier to sit down and watch a show for an hour. Than it is to set aside 2 hours.
It's true. We've had a DVD from Netflix sitting on our bookcase for
like
2 months
now. That happens a lot. Yeah, that happens a lot because you just movies tend to be somewhere between an hour and 45 and 2.5 hours.
That's a big commitment.
And you gotta have extra time. And, for us, it's like an hour is about the sweet spot of time to sit down in the evening and watch something, which we do a lot. So, had a lot of fun over on the Facebook page talking about with different people about the various news that has come out, and different ideas as to what people want to see, what does it all mean, all of that stuff. We really don't know anything about what this show will be yet other than it will be a Lord of the Rings prequel. Right?
Yes.
Which basically... You sent me an article from the OneRing.net the other day that was, I think, about all of the... It was like a deep discussion of like what does the contract say and everything. Okay. Did you send me that?
I sent you one from One Ring, but I don't think it was that. I think it was about Christopher.
Okay. Well, I found another article that was about like it was a lot more of a legal in depth, and I got to go research this more. But like it was this person who has looked at all of the contracts and everything, and or at least the contracts that are publicly available from the past, and they were just kind of doing a long form, and it was a long form discussion of what we know and what we don't know about the rights for film and TV and the history of it all for Tolkien's properties. And basically it's a really interesting and well researched article, but basically I got to the end of it and I was like, so basically we don't know anything about what in the world this is going to be,
Still a big mystery.
It is, and
but we know it's not going to be. And what still a lot of people think is going to be is a Lord of the Rings remake, which it's not going to be.
I know.
Right?
I was looking at this. I was looking at a website that I like. Not the One Ring, a different website that's more about geek culture and stuff like that. And they were talking about John Rhys Davies, who played Gimli in the Lord of the Rings films, in Jackson's films, and they were talking about. Rhys Davies, who I like, and I loved him in Indiana Jones movies when he was the he was one of the comic relief funnier characters in some of the Indiana Jones movies. But he's talking. They asked him, "What do you think about this TV show?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't think it's a good idea. I think Tolkien would be spinning in his grave. And I read further, and I'm like, he doesn't get it, nor does the interviewer, that this is not a Lord of the Rings TV show. This is a Lord of the Rings prequel.
Right. I don't understand how people are still thinking what is not clear about prequel.
Well, and then I read the comments on this article, and it's like, and it's like, I don't think they should do a Lord of the Rings TV show either. And I'm like, people, have you not read the actual...
Obviously they haven't, because they're using Lord of the Rings, we've discussed this already, as the brand, right? Because that's what people know, that's what they're going to recognize.
It's like Star Wars, right? Star Wars was the name of the first film, but they kind of rebranded it later, and lots of people probably know that first film as Star Wars, but it's in the Star Wars canon now, it's known as A New Hope, and it's actually episode 4 of this, of the
but it's still
whole series,
Star Wars,
right?
Yeah. So people are getting confused.
Yeah, and so what did they call it when they decided to make prequels to Star Wars, right? They called them the Star Wars prequels. Right, before they came out. Lord of the Rings
prequel. And it's like, I was like a rock and a hard place, because if they had not called it Lord of the Rings prequel and called it like The Silmarillion or Untold Tales or whatever, Unfinished Tales, whatever, people be like, huh? Like, it was a no-win situation. So we're just gonna have to wait until the dust settles some.
I mean,
and
really,
willing to tell us more.
Even though this hasn't been said, I think it's probably more accurate and based on what we actually know to say that this is a Middle Earth TV series. Right. That's all we really know at this point.
Yeah.
We know that because it's stories preceding Fellowship of the Ring. That's clear from the press release that the official press release says that. Right.
Yeah.
So this is not a retelling of the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
It is. These are stories that precede the Fellowship of the Ring, the Lord of the Rings, right?
Yes.
That is 100% crystal clear from the press release. Okay? So, that could be anything, from what we know, in the 6,000 plus years of history that precedes the Lord of the Rings, and the dozens of tales in that story. It could be anything from Ainulindale to what Frodo had for breakfast the morning before Lord of the Rings began, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, that's what it could be.
It could be. Absolutely, it
could
be. Yes.
And so we also need to mention. So you go back and listen to that episode if you want. We won't get too much further into that right now. Although we'll have much more to say about it as more news comes. I have a feeling things are going to move pretty fast. But one other thing happened after we recorded that bonus episode that's huge, and that's that they announced that Christopher Tolkien had resigned as the director of the Tolkien estate back. The Tolkien estate. What's a estate? The Tolkien estate back in August.
Right.
All right. And so that was like, whoa, there's a curveball. Like, because Christopher, the thought is that Christopher has really been the one. He is the main. He's been the main torch carrier for his father's literary legacy. He's been the driving force behind the publication of the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, and the entire history of Middle-earth, and everything else with Tolkien's name on it that's come out after Tolkien has died. After
Baron
Tolkien
Luthien.
died. Right. Yeah, Baron Luthien that just came out this year, in which he said this was probably going to be the last major thing that he was involved in. Right. And so, the question mark is, like, did Christopher give his blessing to this endeavor before he retired? Right. Yeah. And
fair question.
No one knows, right? Like, that's not clear. My sense, all right, and we had Greg UK actually, our old pal Greg UK. Hey Greg, what's up? Been a long time since we heard from you. Great to hear from you. Greg UK actually sent us a note asking that question.
Right.
What do you all make of Christopher not being, having retired? Greg, I think, said what a lot of Tolkien fans, hardcore Tolkien fans, probably feel, which is, first, there was elation at the idea that there's going to be another on-screen adaptation of Tolkien's works, and then the news of Christopher hits, and then people are like, wait, I thought Christopher had given his blessing to this in the form of the Tolkien estate, and now we learn that he's he retired before the ink was
dry.
dry on the contracts.
Yeah.
So again, like, we don't know anything right now, so it's anybody's guess. Am I a little bit concerned by that? Yeah, I'm not quite as maybe optimistic as I was before, but I'm not all the way. I'm not pessimistic now either, because I just have this sense that Christopher would not have left the Tolkien estate in the hands of a director who he was not happy with.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Who he did not feel like would do a good job. I honestly think Christopher probably, and again, I don't know, but we were talking about all this in the Future of Middle-earth episodes a couple of episodes ago. Like, what is the future, before any of this news came out, right? Before it was even a rumor, what does the future hold for Tolkien stories on screen, right? And other mediums as well.
Yeah.
And I had kind of shared my thoughts, which I'd started thinking about a couple of years ago, that, Christopher, as much as he doesn't, as he was displeased with certain things about Jackson's films and the commercialization of his father's, like the crass pop culturization of some certain things with his father's, works. He needed to get ahead of the game before it was too late,
right,
to anoint people to say, like, because you just can't. It's the long defeat, right? Huh? It's the long defeat to keep these things off the screen, because there's just so much money involved with him, and one of these days he's not going to be here to prevent it, right?
Right, and
so,
the law isn't going to be able to prevent it either, because it's going to be public domain at some point.
At some point, and even if the law could for a long time, which that question's a little bit open ended, but let's assume it can. Like at some point somebody's going to come along and they're just going to name the right price. Somebody with $1 bajillion, which Amazon is worth almost $1 trillion, right?
Yeah, $1
trillion.
I can't even wrap my brain around that.
Cow. I mean, that's 1,000 billions.
That's crazy.
That's a million millions.
Oh man.
So it's like, somebody was going to come along with enough money in their pockets to just be like, we cannot. We cannot.
We can't, in good conscience, turn this down.
So, it was like Christopher needed to get on board and say, like, and do his best to ensure that the legacy was protected from the orcs getting after it. Right. From the Saurons and the Orc Kings of the world getting after it and being like, cool, we got the properties, let's go make some money. You know, like. Because there's lots of people out there that think that way, right? We got us the properties, let's go make some billions, and like, you got to keep it out of those people. There's other people out there who are good people and respect artists, respect their work, and will do good things with them,
Yes.
Just like, get them in the hand. So anyway, all that is to say, who knows what it means that Christopher retired in August. I have hope that he had people that he was happy with in place.
And he had to be involved too, because these things take, it was just a little more than 2 months between when he retired and news of the Amazon.
Yeah. I just can't think it turned around that quickly.
No, it could not have turned around that quickly. These kind of things take months, if not years. So I can't imagine he wasn't involved at the beginning, or even maybe through most of the process. Yeah. But I don't know, who sees? We'll see.
People, I don't know, like, it's exciting, it's mildly concerning, but the timing of that news, but at the end of the day, none of us know, because there's so little that's officially come out yet about all of this. And we just, honestly, we have to wait and see. I'm going to be...
Let's be cautiously optimistic.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it's not a Lord of the Rings remake on TV. Although I will say, we'll talk more about what we'd love to see in the future with these things. I would love to see graphic novel adaptations of all the stories of Middle-earth by really great artists. The Silmarillion is ripe for that. I would love to see those things. I would love to have copies of those on my bookshelf and just be able to look, because I think there's something about this world that lends itself to I want to see these things like live action TV, not live action, but real, not animation, but real people TV, right? And I want to see, but I also think it would be great to see animated versions of certain stories as well, and graphic novel. There's just something that lends itself to the brush, to the pen, right, about these stories.
Totally agree.
And I would love to see, maybe somewhere further down the road, way further down the road, I'd love to see an animated, an animated version of the Lord of the Rings that really goes into, that's a little more maybe whimsical, than the movies were. maybe that's
Maybe
that's the right. I don't know if that's the right
Yeah.
term, but like just a little more of not childish, but like a slightly more childlike feel.
Maybe
to them.
something like in the vein of like My Friend Totoro or
Yeah, you know, like what's that?
yeah,
what's
what is that
name?
guy's name?
We don't watch enough of his movies. He's
Oh,
really
we
good though.
don't. So good, so
Um,
good. I can Google it real quick.
My,
Yeah.
Is it My Friend Totoro?
It is well, that's not the name of the. That's
Well,
like
there's the
that's
what was
the
the
movie, but there's another one that we've seen of his.
he's a
too.
Japanese animator.
Yeah, but I feel like his style is so brilliant because it does have that whimsical quality, and it's kind of, like kids watch it, but it has like this dark side. To
Oh, yeah,
it,
I love
too.
his stuff.
And it's just a really, and it's beautiful. Like it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, there's My
So-
Neighbor Totoro.
Oh, My Neighbor Totoro. That's what it is.
What's his name? Miyazaki. That's right, Miyazaki. Yeah, maybe something in that fashion. Something more with like a kind of an anime feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be really cool to see, and
It
be
would
able to
be, yeah.
be free to go a little bit more into, some of the things that that Jackson's films didn't explore. That because he couldn't figure out what to do with Tom Bombadil, but I think it'd be great to see.
You could
Tom
totally do
Bombadil
that
as part
in
of
an
the stories.
animated version.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And you could do the you could do so many of the things that would have been hard that and what's his face from The Hobbit
Bilbo.
no.
You were like ba.
It
Bjorn?
starts with Bjorn. Thank you. Yeah, that would be
Well, yeah.
Cool.
When we talk about The Hobbit, we got to talk about how Bjorn was betrayed, was portrayed.
portrait.
I didn't mean anything by that. I haven't even thought about that, but was portrayed in the films.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's so much to talk about. This just it's so crazy because in the last few weeks and really the last week we've gone from like, oh, it'd be great one day to see these things, but we'll probably never see them, maybe not even in our lifetime, to oh my gosh, all this stuff is happening and who knows what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
It's just like this
It's been quite a roller
this is
coaster.
this is potentially a Tolkien fan's dream come true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so yes, like you, I remain cautiously optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna be holding the standard in terms of as these things come to life about getting it right. I expect to see, as a huge Tolkien fan, I expect to see Amazon do these things well.
Yes.
And not try to do a whole bunch of not try to make some kind of like
No funny business.
yeah, just no funny business. Respect
Yeah.
the artist.
Right.
Respect the
And
man.
his intent.
Especially this
his
artist.
vision. Yeah.
I mean, he's one of a kind. And if you get this wrong, shame on you.
Yeah.
Right? Flat out. If you get it wrong, shame on you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
These
And
are
we will
sac-
cancel our Amazon Prime
these
membership.
are
super
sacred
fast.
stories.
Yeah.
These are sacred stories.
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
I don't know about canceling the Amazon Prime. That free shipping is pretty cool. I'm just saying, look, I'll probably keep my
that
Amazon
you're
Prime
right.
membership.
That'd probably be a bit drastic.
It's a pretty good deal. But I'm saying, and like, it's not like they're going to care if one person
They're
cancels
not.
their Amazon
No.
Prime membership.
I was being silly.
But look, these are sacred stories,
Yeah.
people. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
No funny business. Shame on you if you don't respect them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Agreed.
But if you can get them right, then we're your biggest fans.
Right. What John said. Moving on.
All right. So, long introduction. Let's talk
Yeah.
about Book 6, Chapter 2.
I think we need to stop there and just count that as a bonus episode and restart with our discussion of the next chapter.
No, I think that's good. 'Cause if I was listening to a podcast that came out this week on Tolkien stuff, I would want to hear a good discussion of that.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe your like attention span is longer than mine.
well, people can skip ahead.
That's true. They can. All right. Well, without further ado.
They're already here, so they don't know they can skip ahead. They don't have anything to skip ahead on. So
That's all right. Well, oh well.
all right.
Anyways.
So here we are, Book 6, Chapter 2, The Land of Shadow. Yeah, I think I want to start by doing a little bit of a lay of the land here because there's
You would.
it gets a little confusing as to how
It
they're
is
proceeding.
confusing.
Proceeding. It's hard
Yeah.
to put this stuff into words. I'm going to give another shout out to one of my favorite Tolkien related books that is not by Tolkien, the Atlas of Middle Earth by Karen Wynne Fonstad, who she's I believe she's not with us anymore. She passed away a few years ago, but we've used this resource on the show before to talk about confusing geographical kinds of situations. And she has a great map for this in towards the end of the Atlas of Middle-earth. So if you're a Tolkien fan and you want to understand the lay of the land a little better, it's great to have this, because she's, her maps are similar to the ones in the back of the book, but they're more detailed. And she actually labels like the timeline so that you can follow along on what dates, this stuff is happening. Because it's actually about 5 days that transpires over the course of this chapter, right? It's basically from March 14th until March 19th that this chapter takes place, okay? Just to give you some idea, from the time they hit Shelob's lair until the escape from the Tower of Cirith Ungol is about 3 days, apparently. Okay. So, from March 11th through March 13th or into 14th. What's cool is the pages in the Atlas of Middle-earth that deal with this are toward the back. It's 170 and 171, the journey of Frodo and Sam, and then but the page right before that is Dunharrow to the Morannon, which basically lays out the timeline for the War of the Ring, right, from the Ride of the Rohirrim all the way to the victory at Minas Tirith, all the way to the Black Gate opens, right? The end of book 5.
Cool.
Okay, so you've got the dates there, and you can just go back and forth to say, okay, on this date, where was the company of Gondor, right, as they were marching towards the Black Gate.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and actually, as we begin this, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields has not yet begun, right? So March 14th is the day before the Battle of the Pelennor Fields begins. Okay, which takes place between the 15th and the 17th of March. So that's just to give us some perspective on where we are in terms of a timeline, what's going on the other side of the mountains, right?
Yes, got it.
So,
cool beans.
And if you look if you use the map in the back of the Return of the King, you can see. So basically, the road they follow for most of this chapter is actually northeastward. So, they go from Cirith Ungol here, and then they hit this Morgai, and so they end up, instead of going right over to Mount Doom, right, which is eastward,
They go north.
Yeah, pretty much all the way to Durthong right here, which is a watchtower over here.
Is that because, I'm trying to remember, is that because they were just trying to stay low? Like, the other way would have been more guarded, or they would have been more visible?
Yeah, basically they come to the decision of like, okay, if we go east, it's going to be a lot more. It's going to be that's being guarded, right? It's going to be a lot more difficult to go that way, like the direct route, than if we go north and then cut over to the east, right? So basically, they go north for most of this chapter, cut over to the east, right there to where the Eisenmouth is. And then that's where they escape at the end of this chapter.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And then they're gonna, the next chapter is gonna deal with how they get to Mount Doom.
Right on.
All right.
That was super helpful. I was confused.
Yeah. So most of this is a northward journey, just so that's clear. All right. So the chapter begins, and they've just run out. They've passed the Watchers again, run out of Cirith Ungol, and the Nazgul gives out a shriek.
Right.
Right. And so Frodo and Sam freak out, and they run. They're running away, trying to get away, stay out of view. And do you want to start reading maybe at the beginning of the chapter?
Oh yeah, sure. Sam had just wits enough left to thrust the field back into his breast. "Run, Mr. Frodo!" he cried. "No, not that way. There's a sheer drop over the wall. Follow me." Down the road from the gate they fled. In 50 paces, with a swift bend round a jutting bastion of the cliff, it took them out of sight from the tower. They had escaped for the moment. Cowering back against the rock, they drew breath, and then they clutched at their hearts. Perching now on the wall beside the ruined gate, the Nazgul sent out its deadly cries. All the cliffs echoed. In terror they stumbled on. Soon the road bent sharply eastward again and exposed them for a dreadful moment to view from the tower. As they flitted across, they glanced back and saw the great black shape upon the battlement. Then they plunged down between high rock walls in a cutting that fell steeply to join the Morgul road. They came to the way meeting. There was still no sign of orcs, nor of an answer to the cry of the Nazgul, but they knew that the silence would not last long. At any moment now the hunt would begin. "This won't do, Sam," said Frodo. "If we were real orcs, we ought to be dashing back to the tower, not running away. The first enemy we meet will know us. We must get off this road somehow." "But we can't," said Sam, "not without wings."
Right. So this is kind of a, this is not an easy road. It's still a perilous road.
Right.
And so they're running down, and they eventually run out, find a place where they can jump off the road just as a band of orcs is coming, and they land in a patch of patch of thorns, like a briar.
Sounds super painful.
Yeah, but at least
better than being captured by orcs.
Well, and better than falling hundreds of feet
That's
to their
true,
death,
which
right?
they thought they might be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So fortunately, they're able to evade capture for now. And I wanted to jump ahead to just a little bit to a little discussion over here. So Frodo, it says, Frodo now led the way northward as near as he could guess among the stones and boulders lying thick at the bottom of the great ravine. But presently he stopped again. "It's no good, Sam," he said. "I can't manage it. This mail shirt, I mean. Not in my present state. Even my mithril coat seemed heavy when I was tired. This is far heavier. And what's the use of it? We shan't win through by fighting." "But we may have some to do," said Sam. "And there's knives and stray arrows. That Gollum isn't dead, for one thing. I don't like to think of you with naught but a bit of leather between you and a stab in the dark." "Look here, Sam, dear lad," said Frodo. "I am tired, weary. I haven't a hope left. But I have to go on trying to get to the mountain as long as I can move. The ring is enough. This extra weight is killing me. It must go, but don't think I'm ungrateful. I hate to think of the foul work you must have had among the bodies to find it for me." So Frodo is just, suffering under the weight of the ring, and everything feels heavy to him at this point. He says, "I haven't a hope left." We talked about that. He's been pretty, I'd say, kind of emotionally and spiritually hopeless for a while now.
Yes.
Right? He's felt that way for for a good bit.
Mm-hmm.
Still, he presses on. Right?
Yeah.
Still, he presses on for the sake of duty. And we had a good discussion, several episodes back about how that works, and how one should still press on even in the face of difficulty. And that's such a big theme in this story, right? In the Lord of the Rings is hope versus despair. What are the two things, right?
Right.
And Denethor is kind of the poster child for despair. In the face of seeming hopelessness, right? Not certain hopelessness, because hopelessness is never 100% certain until you're dead. Right?
True. Yes.
And we'll get more into that discussion, because I think Sam might even say, but beyond that, there's hope, right? Because there's more than just your life that's at play, right?
Yeah. There's the soul and
Well, and so anyway, I just want to call out that Frodo is feeling this weight, the burden of the ring greatly now, and it's affecting if it's not just affecting him spiritually, it's affecting him physically now.
Yeah.
Right. So, even as they're going through this, they're continuing. They're traveling along the road, trying to stay off the road, but using the road as a guide. And this again, this is the Morgai road, this northward road. They have this interesting episode, and it says in the morning of the 15th of March. It was the morning of the 15th of March, and over the Vale of Anduin the sun was rising above the eastern shadow, and the southwest wind was blowing. Theoden lay dying on the Pelennor Fields. So the Battle of Pelennor Fields has begun. It's the 15th of March. Right. Okay. And it says, as Frodo and Sam stood and gazed, the rim of light spread all along the line of the Ephel-Duath, and then they saw a shape, moving at a great speed out of the west. At first only a black speck against the glimmering strip above the mountain tops, but growing until it plunged like a bolt into the dark canopy and passed high above them. As it went, it sent out a long, shrill cry, the voice of a Nazgul. But this cry was no longer held any terror for them. It was a cry of woe and dismay, ill tidings for the Dark Tower. The Lord of the Ringwraiths had met his doom.
So this is Eowyn and is it Mary?
Mary, yeah,
slaying the Nazgul.
That's right. Yes.
That's crazy that they could see that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they're not close, right?
Well, they're not, but you think directionally when it's so basically what they're seeing is the soul of the ring wraith, has been destroyed and it's powerless now, right?
I see. Okay.
So it had power before, but Eowyn and Merry have put an end to its power.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And so now this kind of spiritual terror was capable of imparting, right? Which was one of its greatest powers. It's just the power of like spiritual terror, right? Is broken.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's just it's a wraith without power, right?
Yeah.
And it's coming bearing ill tidings back to its master.
I see.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Basically that I'm powerless now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I thought this little kind of this little interaction here between Sam and Frodo has made me so sad, because there's Sam's like, look at that, look, it's going well, now, don't you have hope, Frodo? And he's like, nope, not so much. And like, I think, I mean, yes, it's Frodo is obviously the one with the ring and he's the one struggling under this weight, but I think Sam's got his own weight too, because sometimes when you're trying to encourage and carry someone who's suffering with this kind of spiritual and physical fatigue and despair, that can be almost, if not more, taxing.
Yeah.
Than what what I guess what I'm trying to say is Sam's job, I think, is equally difficult. He's not carrying the ring, but he's carrying Frodo, who's carrying the ring. And I feel like my heart just goes out to him, because he's got a huge burden on him as well.
Well, but it's amazing to see. It's beautiful to see the role that Sam plays in all of this, because you think if he wasn't there, would Frodo? I mean, Frodo wouldn't even have gotten this far if Sam had not been with him.
Sam's a big reason.
And Sam is the external force that's trying to hold Frodo up spiritually and physically, right?
And that is exhausting.
Yeah,
that can be really exhausting.
Yeah,
when you're the one that's there trying to encourage someone to keep going who doesn't want to keep going.
Yeah,
that takes a toll on him too.
So it makes me think the current Pope Francis has really kind of talked a lot about this idea of accompaniment, right? That in various ways, that as human beings we are, we in many ways we live in a valley of darkness, right? You think about all the things that happens in the world around us. Probably people listening to this show who are going through difficult times. You and I, of course, been through difficult times in various ways. And, he makes a point of the importance of human beings, accompanying one another in friendship, especially in those times. Yeah. Right? That in a way he's kind of developing this, this theology of accompaniment, right? Kind of a spirituality of accompaniment, right? And I think of Sam here as embodying that in a big way, right? Frodo is the one with the crushing burden, and Sam is helping him carry that burden.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, this is Frodo's agony in the garden.
Right.
Right. And he's got Sam. Jesus didn't have a Sam, right? All of his Sams left him and fell asleep. So at least Frodo's got a Sam here.
Yeah. And Sam is that outward. He's that. Even though Frodo has no hope within him, right? He has none of that spiritual. He has none of that kind of like spiritual. It's not necessarily like emotional will. Sometimes you feel hopeful, and the trick is that you, even when you don't feel hopeful, you keep doing the thing you're supposed to do. Right. And Frodo's doing a good job of that, right?
Absolutely.
In the grand scheme of things, but he's got an external person kind of continuing to say, let's keep moving forward. I'm here, Mr. Frodo. I'll help you, right? And so he's kind of that. In a way, he's helping to lift Frodo's spirits, providing something that can keep Frodo going. Right. Right.
Yes.
So anyway, just something, a worthy example in Sam there for sure.
Oh yeah.
All right. So they're continuing their journey along the Morgai, and we've talked a lot in the past about the various landscapes that Tolkien paints for us with words, and some of them are very beautiful, Many of them are very beautiful. I think it's worth talking about what we see here. And there's a couple of different examples of that, but I'll go ahead and read. This first one as they journey along the Morgai road. Sharing a wafer of limbus and munching it as best they could with their parched mouths, Frodo and Sam plodded on. The light, though no more than a grey dusk, was now enough for them to see that they were deep in the valley between the mountains. It sloped up gently northward, and at its bottom went the bed of a now dry and withered stream. Beyond its stony course they saw a beaten path that wound its way under the feet of the westward cliffs. Had they known, they could have reached it quicker, for it was a track that left the main Morgul road at the western bridge end, and went down by a long stair cut in the rock to the valley's bottom. It was used by patrols or by messengers going swiftly to lesser posts and strongholds north away, between Cirith Ungol and the narrows of Isenmouth, the iron jaws of Carak Angren. It was perilous for the hobbits to use such a path, but they needed speed, and Frodo felt that he could not face the toil of scrambling along among the boulders or in the trackless glens of the Morgai, and he judged that northward was, maybe, the way that their hunters would least expect them to take. The road east to the plain or the pass back westward, those they would first search most thoroughly. Only when he was well north of the tower did he mean to turn and seek for some way to take him east on the last desperate stage of his journey. So now they crossed the stony bed and took to the Orc path, and for some time they marched along it. The cliffs at their left were overhung, and they could not be seen from above. But the path made many bends, and at each bend they gripped their sword hilts and went forward cautiously. The light grew no stronger, for Orodruin was still belching forth a great fume that, beaten upwards by the opposing airs, mounted higher and higher until it reached a region above the wind and spread in an immeasurable roof, whose central pillar rose out of the shadows beyond their view. They had trudged far more than an hour when they heard a sound that brought them to a halt. Unbelievable but unmistakable. Water trickling. Out of a gully on the left, so sharp and narrow that it looked as if the black cliff had been cloven by some huge axe, water came dripping down, the last remains, maybe, of some sweet rain gathered from sunlit seas, but ill-fated to fall at last upon the walls of the black land and wander fruitless down into the dust. Here it came out of the rock in a little falling streamlet, and flowed across the path, and turning south ran away swiftly to be lost among the dead stones. So this is a pretty barren, rocky, craggy land, they're traveling in, but we get here the background of their decision to continue northward along the road.
Right.
And the reason they chose that instead of going the straight route, right? Basically,
be less expected.
Is exactly less expected, less watched.
Right.
So this is not, Mordor indeed up close. Not a pretty place.
No,
not a pretty place.
No, anything that's belching fumes and where nothing grows. No, I do not want to go to there.
And we get a little more of it. It says the riverbed was now some way below the path. They scrambled down to it and began to cross it. To their surprise, they came upon dark pools fed by threads of water trickling down from some source higher up the valley. Upon its outer marges, under the westward mountains, Mordor was a dying land, but it was not yet dead. And here things still grew, harsh, twisted, bitter, struggling for life. In the glens of the Morgai, on the other side of the valley, low scrubby trees lurked and clung. Coarse grey grass tussocks fought with the stones, and withered mosses crawled on them. And everywhere grew writhing, tangled brambles. A great writhing, tangled bramble sprawled. Some had long, stabbing thorns, some hooked barbs that rent like knives. The sullen, shriveled leaves of a past year hung on them, grating and rattling in the sad airs, but their maggot-ridden buds were only just opening. Flies, dun or grey or black, marked like orcs with a red eye-shaped blotch, buzzed and stung, and above the briar thickets clouds of hungry midges danced and reeled. So it just gets increasingly more unpleasant as they go. But even in this, and this is, I think, one of the best passages, certainly my favorite passage in the chapter, maybe one of the best in the book. So they're continue on the road, both struggling with their own weariness. And Sam is keeping a lookout. He's holding Frodo's hand as he does this, and it says, Sam struggled with his own weariness, and he took Frodo's hand. And there he sat silent till deep night fell. Then at last, to keep himself awake, he crawled from the hiding place and looked out. The land seemed full of creaking and cracking and sly noises, but there was no sound of voice or of foot. Far above the Ephel Duath in the west, the night sky was still dim and pale. There, peeping among the cloud rack above a dark tor high up in the mountains, Sam saw a white star twinkle for a while. The beauty of it smote his heart as he looked up out of the forsaken land, and hope returned to him. For like a shaft, clear and cold, the thought pierced him that in the end the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. His song in the tower had been defiance rather than hope, for then he was thinking of himself. Now for a moment his own fate and even his master's ceased to trouble him. He crawled back into the brambles and laid himself by Frodo's side, and putting away all fear, he cast himself into a deep, untroubled sleep. So Sam looks up in this cloudy land where, you can't often see the sky above you, beyond the clouds, right? The clouds kind of put forth by Mount Doom.
Right.
And he sees this one star. And this one star says, smotes him. The beauty of it smote him within. And for a moment, this is just great, This is kind of what I was talking about before. He realized that in the end, the shadow was only a small and passing thing, right? I mean, where they are right now, the shadow seems like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
It's oppressive.
Exactly. The shadow seems like it's just like, going, you can't get beyond it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But Sam looks up, sees this star, and he realizes like there was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach. Right? Beyond the reach of the shadow.
Right.
Right? There, so what's going on here? He realizes that even if the shadow wins right now, right? Even if Sauron gets the ring back, and the shadow wins, Sauron will never be able to grasp the beauty of that star.
Right. Right.
And there's countless stars beyond his reach. Right? He's utterly powerless compared to the beauty of the cosmos, of the whole of creation. Right?
Right.
The whole of it all.
Exactly. So even though it seems like he's winning, right? The shadow is winning, he's still, there's a greater power.
Right.
Right? There's a higher power that he can never defeat.
Right. Yeah, and what he says here is just so wonderful, right? Now for a moment his own fate and even his master's ceased to trouble him. He crawled back into the brambles and laid himself by Frodo's side. So he said his fate and his own fate and even Frodo's ceased to trouble him.
That's that peace that surpasses all understanding.
Yeah, it's that. I mean, that's incredible, and and I think that's where Sam realizes a true victory, right? Because in that moment, he realizes that even if I die, and even if Frodo dies, even if we fail in our mission. Right? The shadow won't have sway forever.
Right.
The shadow is a passing thing.
Yeah.
So all I can do is give my part to defeat it. But if I don't, I can be at peace because someone else will. Right?
Yeah.
But, that enables him, that realization enables him to give up himself more. Right?
It
to
does.
realize, to give him himself even unto death. Right? And Frodo even unto death. Right?
Right. Yeah, no, it's beautiful, and wouldn't you say that this star is something that the church would refer to as an actual grace?
Yeah,
it's a supernatural help, right?
Yeah,
it's a push in the right direction.
Yeah, signal grace, is that an appropriate term?
I've studied it as actual grace, but
yeah,
it might be the same thing. Because actual grace is it's a supernatural help.
Right.
As
opposed to sanctifying grace.
Right. Which is the new life, the gift of new life.
Right, which is the state of grace. And actual grace is something that is goes, an actual grace applies to you in a certain, is something given to you specifically.
Right, specifically
in a
for
particular moment.
Right, it kind of comes and goes.
Right.
It's circumstantial based on what you need at that point in time. I didn't mean for this to turn into a theology discussion, but it...
well, it already is theological, right?
Well, I know, but I didn't want to get too sidetracked by this, but it may be... It may be signal grace as well, but anyway, I know it's actual grace.
Yeah. So... signal graces are extraordinary graces that move the soul by the intellect and will in such a way that the reception of the grace to a certain degree can even be detected by others, or less commonly even in ourselves. They can be a sign of God's mercy, but we should know that all grace is God's mercy, whether or not it's detectable. Most grace, after all, is not able to be detected. A lot of times God grants signal graces when he desires a conversion that will take the soul to a whole different level of faithfulness, preparing them for the person's new phase in life. So I think that's an appropriate way of putting it, right? A signal grace, a signal or an actual grace.
Yes.
I think they're similar ideas, if not the same idea, under a different term.
Agreed.
But this is something that is given to Sam, and it as because he's walking this road, and Sam is a strong soul. He's a strong spirit, but he's suffering too in all of this, right?
Absolutely.
He's going through difficulties too.
Yeah.
And he at the same time, while he's holding Frodo up, that's sapping his own strength, physical and spiritual, right? They're both running out of the same fuel, right?
Right.
It's just Frodo's a little further on that path than he is, right? But Sam is approaching it because he has to give of himself to Frodo, right? In that way.
Right. Absolutely.
So this is a signal grace, and it enables him to be utterly self-sacrificial.
Right.
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 Utterly unselfish.
Yeah.
Which is almost impossible on a natural level for a human being or a human-like being.
Yes.
Right?
You need a supernatural help for that. I think a less churchy term for it would be like a God wink, right? It's like just that, which I know you and I have talked about this, that since we've become Catholic, we've I don't know if it's that we've looked for these kinds of things more, but we've noticed them more.
I haven't looked for them more, but they happen more.
They happen more, and I don't know if that's because they're happening more, or if that we now look for them. We have a better sense of when they are happening, and we can pick up on them more. But they're such gifts.
Yeah, and
we're such gifts.
We've never been the type of people who who see the classic term is see a Marian apparition in every grilled cheese, right? That was never been my thing. But there's just certain things that have happened to us over the last several years that have just if you tell them to people who are just utter skeptics, they're going to find some way of explaining it, because that's their way of viewing things, right?
Right.
But and I'm not saying that they weren't necessarily they're not necessarily more to the story. I just don't know. But you live through them and you realize them, and in your present, the fullness of your present state.
Right.
You're just like,
how
can that be anything from other than just like God saying, "Hang in there.
I got your back.
Yeah. I'm here. Trust me."
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because you especially need it at that particular moment. I mean, I had two things like that happen to me in the year that I lost my job, right? That I lost my job back in 2014.
Yeah.
I think I've shared a little bit about the story, one of which is very Tolkienian, which is just as I had finished writing my book for Baron and Luthien, Tolkien's Requiem, I wander into church one day and I meet someone named, drumroll please, Tanubiel. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, yes. Oh, yeah. Tanubiel is a real common name, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. I remember you came home and you told me, and you were so excited, and I was like, what does that mean? I've never heard that name before.
I know. But for me,
it's just what you needed. Yeah, right. Anybody else?
I had lost my job a week before, and I had been like, maybe I need to do some more stuff with Tolkien, maybe I can do some stuff like that. And it's like, oh my gosh, And she's a real person. Yeah. Like, I just saw her at the grocery store the other day. We're not making this up. Right. Yeah. This is a real person. We've met another person named Tanubiel who's corresponded with us some on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Actually.
Okay.
Yeah, you remember that a couple of months ago, but maybe you don't. But
I don't think I do.
We haven't heard from her in a while. I'd love to hear from you again.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, I do remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, they're so great because they're specifically for the situation that you're in. It's exactly what you need. Right. And it can be as small as like a parking spot, right? Like a rock star parking spot in like the pouring down rain when you've just had a rotten day. It could be something that small, or it could be something a little bit more, crazy. But if you look for these things, you're gonna see them.
Oh yeah.
Because God is all present. He's all knowing, and he's got our backs.
Oh yeah. It's And I hear other stories from other people, and it's again, these people are not are not naive, credulous people.
Right.
Right. They're not willing to believe anything you say to them.
They're very rational.
There are plenty of people out there like that. Don't get me wrong, and I know some of them. Okay.
Yes.
But there are people out there who are not normally, even if these things happen to them, are not want to share them.
Right.
But then something happens, and you're just like, whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you explain that? Is there any other way? Yes, you could. Yes, Mr. Skeptic. You could explain that. Sure, you could find a way, but just run the odds on it. You know.
Exactly. That's the trick. Is the odds.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway. But that's what's happening.
Yeah, that is what's happening.
That's, in a way, and this is not like it's not like it's a particularly miraculous thing that happens to Sam here. He's had some miracles happen for him, but it's not particularly miraculous here, right? He just sees a star,
right? But the way that the effect that the star has is miraculous. The star in and of itself, no. Like we all see stars every night, right? But this one particular one had a special purpose for Sam. And I remember when I was reading this passage, and just before it mentioned his song in the tower, I realized as I was reading, I was like, oh, his song in the tower. Like, that's what this is about. That was foreshadowing.
Absolutely. And, you know, the other important thing to say about that is that, you know, this all says something profound about those kinds of events, those signal graces. Like, what are they? Well, you know, and again, we feel free to talk about this stuff, not because we want to proselytize, but because this is Tolkien's own background. This helps. He's a Catholic, right? Yes. His view of reality is shot through and through with with Catholicism and Christianity, right? And so this is helping to understand the way he thought, right? The way he thought, the reason he included these types of things. So sometimes you might receive something you're just like, whoa, it blows your mind, and like I've had those things happen to me. The one I just shared as an example. But then sometimes you just have things happen where they're not particularly amazing on an outward level, right? If you try to tell them as a story to someone else, they're just gonna be like, so what? Yeah. But the way it impacts you in that particular moment, you realize that this is someone speaking to you. This is someone who loves you speaking to you. It's like when you're going through a difficult time, and someone who loves you comes along to you, and they know what to say to you, and they say it to you to help you, right? And it's not like it's some miraculous thing. They just know you, right? And they love you, and they want to help you,
right?
And that's the kind of personal level that we're talking about, and that the Christian view of God is, right, that he's three persons, but you know, he's capable. He interacts with us on a personal level, right?
Yeah.
And you know, again, I think I'm grateful that you called out this being some kind of a signal of grace, because I hadn't even thought of it in that way. But like, there's in a way here, this is a communication to Sam to keep going. Yeah,
stay the course.
Yeah. So anyway,
and they're gonna need it in the events that follow, because I mean, it only gets harder from here.
Absolutely. So, all right. So, the shadow is a small and passing thing. Sam is, the fire within him is rekindled to be able to live self-sacrificially, to give of himself even to the point of death, and then we get, we continue on the journey on the Morgai up north. And we get a few more indications of what the land looks like, right? And some of the things going on in the land. Two interesting parts here. So you want to read this part that's still far away, 40 miles at least?
Still far away, 40 miles at least, they saw Mount Doom, its feet founded in ashen ruin, its huge cone rising to a great height, where its reeking head was swathed in cloud. Its fires were now dimmed, and it stood in smoldering slumber, as as threatening and dangerous as a sleeping beast. Behind it, there hung a vast shadow, ominous as a thundercloud, the veils of Mordor that was reared far away upon a long spur of the Ashen Mountains thrust down from the north. The dark power was deep in thought, and the eye turned inward, pondering tidings of doubt and danger. A bright sword and a stern kingly face it saw, and for a while it gave little thought to other things, and all its great stronghold, gate on gate and tower, was wrapped in a brooding gloom.
Okay.
So is that where Aragorn looked into the Palantir.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Right.
That would make sense.
Yeah, that's where he further kind of jousting with Sauron. And so just a bit later, and I love this part. This is a great little part snippet in there. Neither he nor Frodo knew anything of the great slave-worked fields away south in this wide realm. Actually, let me step back a paragraph. I don't like the look of things at all, said Sam. Pretty hopeless, I call it. Saving that, where there's such a lot of folk there must be wells or water, not to mention food. And these are men, not orcs, or my eyes are all wrong. Neither he nor Frodo knew anything of the great slave-worked fields away south in this wide realm, beyond the fumes of the mountains, by the dark sad waters of Lake Nirnan, north of the great roads that ran away east and south to tributary lands from which the soldiers of the tower brought long wagon trains of goods and booty and fresh slaves. Here in the northward regions were the mines and forges and the musterings of long-planned war, and here the dark power, moving its armies like pieces on the board, was gathering them together. Its first moves, the first feelers of its strength, had been checked upon its western lines, southward and northward. For the moment it withdrew them, and brought up new forces, massing them about Cirith Gorgor for an avenging stroke. And if it had also been its purpose to defend the mountain against all approach, it could scarcely have done more. I love one of the things that from the very beginning I've talked about with Tolkien's works that I love is the depth that that he has within them. Right, the stories.
Yes,
there's stories everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
stories within stories within stories.
They're looking out over this land, and it's like little do they know. And so you look at the map. Look at map 4 in particular in the back of the book, and you see the Land of Mordor, and basically their experience in Mordor is right here. Right, it's in this little upward northwest corner.
Okay.
Right, but really the Land of Mordor, there's this vastness way behind that, right? Going all the way back to it. And so they talk about the land around the Lake Nirnan, the Sea of Nirnan, this huge inland sea right here.
Yeah.
And there's apparently this whole towns and cities and everything back here from which Sauron controls, and he is able to bring in goods and so there's production behind all these things, right? This is there's people that live there, right? And they're brought to be slaves, right?
Yeah.
So you could tell stories about all those things. There's stories going on in all those places, and that's just fascinating to me, right? It would be so back to the TV show in the future there. I just hope that we get to explore some of these things that are virtually unexplored within Tolkien's
I totally
tales.
agree. That would be awesome.
And it just a marvel to me his ability to create so much depth in a fictional world.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So much background. The ability to explore all these places. All right. So, do you know what a gill is?
A gill.
Ghyll.
No, I'm guessing it's some kind of landscape term.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you know?
I did. I looked it up. It's basically like a look it up again. Yeah, a deep ravine, especially a wooded one.
Ah.
Deep ravine, especially a wooded one.
Okay.
We'll hear him say it. Gill.
Oh, just like a fish's gill.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so a narrow mountain stream.
So wait, that's where they are, or that's what they're...
It just basically says, they soon found that it was impossible to make their way along the crest of the Morgai as anywhere along its higher levels, pathless as they were and scored with deep gills.
Ah, okay.
So, so basically they're trying to travel this high road within the Morgai, but they're finding that at this point it's almost impossible to take that high road, so they've got to go back lower.
Got it.
So they go back lower, and along come two orcs. So these orcs are, again, as orcs will do, they're fighting amongst themselves.
Yes.
And it says, just to describe them, one was clad in ragged brown and was armed with a bow of horn. It was of a small breed, black-skinned, with wide and snuffing nostrils, evidently a tracker of some kind. The other was a big fighting orc, like those of Shagrat's company, bearing the token of the eye. He also had a bow at his back and carried a short, broad-headed spear. As usual, they were quarreling, and being of different breeds, they used the common speech after their fashion. And so they're fighting. They're just basically fighting over whatever. It says, "I'm going home," said the small. Let's see, the smaller one. "I'm going home. No good wearing my nose out on stones anymore. There's not a trace left, I say. I've lost the scent through what giving way to you. It went up into the hills, not along the valley, I tell you." "Not much use, are you little snufflers," said the big orc. "I reckon eyes are better than your snotty noses." "Then what have you seen with them?" "Garn, you don't even know what you're looking for." Whose blame's that?" said the soldier. "Not mine. That comes from higher up. First they say it's a great elf in bright armor, then it's a sort of small dwarf man. Then it must be a pack of rebel Uruk-hai, or maybe it's all of the lot together." "Arr," said the tracker. "They've lost their heads, that's what it is. And some of the bosses are going to lose their skins too, I guess, if what I hear is true. Tower raided and all, and hundreds of your lads done in, and prisoner got away. If that's the way your fighters go on, small wonder there's bad news from the battles." "Who says there's bad news?" shouted the soldier. "Arr, who says there isn't? That's cursed rebel talk, and I'll stick you if you don't shut it down, see?" All right, said the tracker. "I'll say no more and go on thinking. But what's the black sneak got to do with it all? That gobbler with the flapping hands?" "I don't know. Nothing, maybe. But he's up to no good, nosing around, I'll wager. Curse him. No sooner had he slipped us and run off than word came he's wanted alive, wanted quick." "Well, I hope they get him and put him through it," growled the tracker. "He messed up the scent back there, pinching that cast-off mail shirt that he had found, and paddling all around the place before I could get there." "He'd saved his life anyhow," said the soldier. "Why, before I knew he was wanted, I shot him as neat at 50 paces right in the back. But he ran on." "Gar, you missed him," said the tracker. "First you shoot wild, then you run too slow, and then you send for the poor trackers. I've had enough of you." He loped off. "You come back," shouted the soldier, "or I'll report you." "Who to? Not to your precious Shagrat. He won't be captain any more." "I'll give your name and number to the Nazgul," said the soldier, lowering his voice to a hiss. "One of them's in charge of the tower now." The other halted, and his voice was full of fear and rage. "You cursed, peachy sneak thief," he yelled. "You can't do your job, and you can't even stick by your own folk. Go to your filthy little shriekers, and may they freeze the flesh off of you. If the enemy doesn't get them first, they've done in number one, I've heard, and I hope it's true." The big orc, spear in hand, leapt after him, but the tracker, springing behind a stone, put an arrow in his eye as he ran up, and he fell with a crash. The other ran off across the valley and disappeared. So, again...
These orcs, man. They're making Frodo and Sam's job all the easier, right? Killing each other off.
Oh, totally. But Frodo and Sam talk about this, and they realize that Gollum is still out and about. Cause
that's the flapper that...
the gobbler they talk about, Yeah. So, they're still not out of danger with respect to Gollum even. So Gollum's on their tail now, and so it's just, no rest for the weary. And so they continue on. The weight continues to get even heavier, and Frodo is just ready at this point to give up everything to Sam. He gives him the feel, he gives him sting, and he's just trying to make it 1 foot at a time.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
All right. So they're continuing on the North Road, and finally they get to a point where they realize it's time to turn east. Right? They weren't sure when, but they basically come all the way up to the point of where they're about to run into Durthong, right? This tower that sits in the northwest of Mordor.
Yep.
And then they realize that there's no use continuing any further, and they hit the road east. And and Sam at one point actually spies Gollum again. He actually sees Gollum again.
Right.
And
when he went to go looking for water, right?
Right. When he goes to go looking for water. That Gollum's about again, I'm afraid, Mr. Frodo. Leastways, if it wasn't him, then there's two of him. I went away to find some water and spied him nosing around just as I turned back. I reckon it isn't safe for us both to sleep longer, and begging your pardon, I can't hold up my lids much longer. Bless you, Sam. Lie down and take your proper turn. But I'd rather have Gollum than orcs. At any rate, he won't give us away to them, not unless he's caught himself. So, they're having to watch their backs for Gollum now as well. And as they've turned east now, they're going on this road. They get overtaken by a band of orcs, and fortunately, they're garbed enough to look like a couple of orcs themselves, small orcs themselves.
Right.
And they get picked up by this group.
Yeah.
Right, and they're forced to join in the march with them, all the way over to the Isenmouth, where the fortress of Udun is, and so at this point, and this is March 19th. And at this point, the forces of Gondor are about halfway through their march to the Black Gate. They're somewhere in this area. All right,
Okay.
they've crossed the Anduin, and Frodo and Sam have arrived about here where it says Icenmouth on the big map in
Got
the
it.
back. Right,
Okay.
the big map of Mordor in the back. So they're able to skip away at an opportune moment. And it says, with a last despairing effort, Frodo raised himself on his hands and struggled on for maybe 20 yards. Then he pitched down into a shallow pit that opened unexpectedly before them, and there he lay like a dead thing. So, Frodo not in good shape.
No.
I kind of ran through those last couple of pages pretty quickly. Anything that I missed that you wanted to call out in that?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I mean, good stuff
I think
in
you
there,
hit
but
the high notes.
yeah, but the high points I think we got.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So that's Book 6, Chapter 2. Next one is Mount Doom.
Oh man.
We're there.
It's getting deeper and darker.
Yep.
Haku. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 syllables in haiku.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 syllables in haiku.
Oh yeah. Alright.
All right.
Haiku time. Let's do this.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. I win. Yarn. Garn.
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 Darn, Garsner. But wait, here's mine. I'll go first.
Do it.
Alright. Going ever on, the dark road winds, the load grows. All light, most hope, lost.
Nice.
Thanks.
Well done.
Thanks.
All right. You want to hear mine?
Totes, yo.
Such a weight, dragging Frodo down to death and doom. A star sings in Sam.
Oh, I like it. I like the, I know there's a fancier word for a comparison, but there's like a, kind of the despair.
Juxtaposition.
There it is. Yeah, juxtaposition. The despair of Frodo versus the consolation of Sam.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
Frodo's in desolation while Sam is receiving a consolation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. Good stuff. All right, we got a few haiku from our loyal listeners.
Wonderful.
We have one from Gregory Simonson.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Greg. He says, "Salutations, Sentinels of the Tolkien Road. I hope you are well. Here are my latest efforts." He wrote like 3.
Well.
Yeah, I'll read the first one. While they struggle on, ill news comes to the Dark Lord. Black's queen is captured. Thought I'd squeeze in a chess reference, he says.
Yes.
Which
I got it.
I thought you would.
Yeah.
I didn't, because I don't play chess. But now that he said that it was a chess reference, now I get it.
No, that's a good reference, because the queen in chess is the most mobile, kind of the most.
It's not that's not how you win, though, right?
No, but the queen is the most powerful offensive tool.
Got it.
Because it can move in any direction as many spaces as it wants to.
So he's comparing the Nazgul
right
to the queen.
Right. The Lord of the Ring race. Yeah.
Right, got it.
Whereas the king in chess is pretty immobile, right? It can only move one space in any direction, right? And once you've checkmated the king, then the game's over.
Got
right?
it. Okay.
So,
but the king is not as mobile as the queen.
Right, the king nowhere near. So, you think about it, like Sauron is really more like the king in chess.
Yeah.
'Cause he's not very
in his
mobile.
tower, yeah. Huh.
And
cool
he has
beans.
to send the queen to do his work for him. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Are you going to read Greg's other 2?
Yeah. Light and water prove wills other than the Dark Lord's are at work for good. Nice.
Yeah. Good.
Right on. I'll read the other one.
Yeah.
Marching among orcs, strength ebbing, all seems lost, but help comes in strange ways. He says, both the light and water seen in the meeting of the 2 orc bands at the crossroads seems to me to point to other powers at work even within Mordor. It may be Galadriel or the Valar or even Eru. Yes.
Yeah,
Who knows?
totally.
Or all of the above.
Don't they mention something about... Oh, when they find water.
Mm-hmm.
Sam says, when I see the lady next, I'm going to thank her. So
Right.
he clearly sees that
Mm-hmm.
as a, you know, as happening through the intercession of Galadriel.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
I feel like Greg's closing is a haiku too. I'm trying to. Until next time, travel safe down the road. Gregory Simonson.
It is.
I think it might be. It's maybe one syllable off, but I don't know if he intended that. But that's kind of funny. It looked like a haiku, and so I was like,
Next time. Until next time, travel safe down the road. Gregory Simons. Oh, one syllable short.
yeah.
Close enough. Good stuff. Thank you, Greg.
You
Always
could do if
great
you did
hearing
until
from
the next
you.
time. Travel safe down the road, Gregory Simonson.
That's true. That is true. We have a note from Matt Scarrance. Haven't heard from him in a while. What's up, Matt?
Hey, Matt.
The subject of his email is In the Shadows of Mordor. Let's get out of here, please. He says, Dear Greta and John, first I'd like to say what a brilliant episode your two-part Future of Middle-earth was. It was indeed providential that part 2 did not come out until after the big news. It's exciting to see the works of Tolkien return to the screen, though personally I'm still holding out for a 6-part film series by a medievalist. One aspect that you didn't mention in your episode was how Tolkien's songs and poems are being adapted and are inspiring other creators. And he wants us to make a special episode when we get a chance. On that.
I mean...
He says there's a singing group on YouTube called Clamavi de Profundis, who have adapted some of Tolkien's songs from The Lord of the Rings, which I think you'll really enjoy. Their interpretation of the Song of Durin is my favorite version and fits well with Howard Shore's music. Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
Make sure you forward that one to me. So
I know. I need to. I totally will. All right, so here it has a couple of haiku for Land of Shadow. Here's his first one. Light and now water. Galadriel's blessings from Lorien to Hell.
Wow.
It's good.
Nice.
And we just talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah.
About the intercession of Galadriel. Good stuff. Here's his second one.
From the west pale morn comes bringing hope to halflings, lost in sunless lands. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice alliteration there with the L sound.
Yeah. Good.
Cool.
Always good. All right. Yeah. Good stuff.
Cool. Is that the extent of our haiku?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Right on.
It is.
Okay. I wanted to mention. So we had a new correspondence last time with Michael Noel. The guy who works at the late night gym. Right.
Oh, right.
Listen
Yes.
to our podcast.
Yes.
So he had asked about a particular character or a particular scene in Book 5 in the Paths of the Dead, and this is in the Passing of the Great Company, where in the middle of that chapter, actually more towards the end of it, but there's a scene where it goes, nonetheless he drew near and saw Aragorn kneeling, while Eladon had held aloft both torches. Before him were the bones of a mighty man. He had been clad in mail, and still his harness lay there whole, for the cavern's air was as dry as dust, and his hauberk was gilded. His belt was of gold and garnets, and rich with gold was the helm upon his bony head face downward on the floor. He had fallen near the far wall of the cave, as now could be seen, and before him stood a stony door closed fast. His finger bones were still clawing at the cracks. A notched and broken sword lay by him, as if he had hewn at the rock in his last despair. So, Michael wanted to know who this guy was, who this person was that Aragorn kneels to.
Oh, we
Or kneels
talked about
before.
this, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we may not have gone too much into into too much depth on it, but basically, Michael, this is Baldur, Baldur, in a little bit later in the Muster of Rohan, it talks. Theoden shares about Baldur's story. He says, "Ancient legend, now seldom spoken, has somewhat to report. If these old tales speak true that have come down from father to son in the house of Eorl, then the door under Dwemerberg leads to a secret way that goes beneath the mountain to some forgotten end. But none have ever ventured in to search its secrets since Baldur, son of Brago, passed the door and was never heard among men again. A rash vow he spoke as he drained the horn at the feast which Brago made to hallow new-built Meduseld, and he came never to the high seat of which he was the heir." So Baldur was was an early heir to the throne of Rohan, right? And and so basically at the feast at which they were hallowing, basically blessing, celebrating the construction of Meduseld, right? The main capital of Rohan. He speaks a rash vow that he's going to go and find the way through the under the mountains, right? And so this is who they find, it's Baldur, right?
Got it. Yeah.
So that's who that is. Poor Baldur didn't make it out alive. Spoke a rash vow. So be careful of those rash vows, people.
Yeah, don't speak. That's why you don't speak rash vows.
People that speak rash vows in Tolkien's works, things don't normally wind up well for them.
Yeah,
and they usually make it bad for other people too. Poor, Baldur not only killed himself in the process of speaking this rash vow, but his father died of a broken heart, right?
Yeah.
And of course, Fëanor is the great speaker of the rash vow, and his sons, he perishes, and then his sons all eventually perish too, or
exiled,
and fade into really a nothingness. So
so don't do it. Just don't.
Yeah.
Don't do rash vows.
Don't do rash vows, people.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
I try to have 2 rules in my life: eat a good breakfast and don't do rash vows.
There you go.
All
Those
right.
people who aren't going to respect Tolkien's works coming back again.
So, Michael, hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully that answers your question. He he apologized for the unintentional Star Trek reference, but glad it created a sweet reference. I was like, I'm cool with that. I like Star Trek. I like talking about Star Trek.
You like it, and it's just going to go right over my head.
Right.
So no harm done.
And he said, "Take care and thanks for the Amazon episode. My best friend Steve and I are stoked about the news. Good news is always welcome. Good news is always welcome, fam. Stay dece. Stay dece. I think we might start saying stay dece. I've never said that.
Is that short for decent?
I guess so. Yeah.
I'm all about
stay dece.
Like shortening short words.
Yes.
I think it's the best. That's why I say totes.
The fewer syllables, the better.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're so excited to hear about it too. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be an exciting time, people, and yeah, it could end up being a disaster, but I don't think it will be. I
think Amazon knows enough that there's they know that most Tolkien fans are hardcore, and they're going to want to see it done well and done right.
I think there's lots of lessons learned from the past. I think Amazon is has a good reputation for putting out quality content.
Yes.
And I think even if there are some missteps at first, I think they'll course correct. And I think the Tolkien Estate's involvement is the thing that encourages me most.
Yes.
Even if it isn't complete, even if there is some funny stuff with Christopher, we'll see what the future holds. So bottom line, it's going to be an interesting time. We're gonna stay on top of it as news comes forth. We'll talk about it, and say your prayers.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't do rash vows.
That's
You're
right.
Good.
No, eat a good breakfast. Eat your greens, as Mr. T would say.
Right.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Next time, Book 6, Chapter 3, Mount Doom. Send us your haiku, and we will talk at you next time. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. Bye,
Peace
y'all.
out. Bye. Please remember to check out truemyths.org and tolkienroad.com for show notes and plenty of other Tolkien goodness. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes, and consider supporting us financially via patreon.com/TolkienRoad. On our next episode, we'll continue our journey through the Lord of the Rings with Book 6, Chapter 3, Mount Doom. Please send correspondence to tolkienroadpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, the road goes ever on.